Hey everyone, Kyle here. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain a little bit. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and so much more. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm. They'll have everything you need all in one place. I can speak from my experience. It's been awesome so far and super easy. So go check it out, guys, and we'll see you later. All right, welcome everyone. This is Our Travel Experiences. I'm your host, Kyle Rasmussen, and today I have with me Candice. Candice, how are you?
So good. How are you?
Doing awesome. As I mentioned to you before we hopped on here, I'm currently sitting in my hostel in Madrid, and you're over in Washington State. So truly embracing this whole travel mindset with this podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah, so I'm super excited to talk about your travel experiences today. From what I've seen on your website and Instagram, sounds like or looks like you have a lot of cool ones, a lot of cool stories to share. So I'm really looking forward to it today.
Thanks. Yeah, I totally do. It's been quite a journey to this point.
Yeah, I'm sure. So let's just start. Like, give the listeners a little background on yourself, how much you traveled, and like how you kind of got into this life.
Ooh. So I've actually been nomadic since I was 8 years old. I bounced
Oh
between
wow.
Washington and Texas. And then once I hit 18, like I started wilderness guiding. I was in the medical field for a while. That didn't quite sit well with me. So then I jumped ship from everything and moved up to Alaska. And like throughout all of this time, I had done some backpacking. I had hitchhiked quite a bit. Um, and then once I moved up to Alaska, I started tour guiding. And that's really whenever like traveling took on a whole new life of like long-term travel and slow travel and being gone for like 6 months at a time and eventually leading into van life and traveling almost exclusively.
Yeah. Wow. How long has this journey been to get to this point?
Ooh. Um, 2015 is whenever I moved to Alaska, and so that was kind of like the pivotal moment. And
Mhm.
prior to that, I was doing what most US citizens do and just do like the weekend warrior, like, oh, I have 2 weeks off from grad school. I'm going to go hitchhike around Hawaii or whatever it was, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so that was all prior to 2015. So still traveling, but a little bit more the norm.
hmm Yeah. So how did it that you moved to Alaska? How did that take place?
Ooh, so I was working on my doctorate in physical therapy and I had broke my foot during the summer as a wilderness therapist for a girls outdoor leadership school, right? Um, got to PT school. I had like all of these amazing epiphanies while I was out in the woods for like an entire summer backpacking. Um, and I got back to school and it was just like, it did not feel right, like at all. Like the thought of being in a clinic for the next 40 years of my life inside and just like in the same city too, like
hmm
that was just like such a heavy load on my being. um and so I left abruptly, like very abruptly.
Yeah.
Was living out of my Corolla, my little car, for a couple months, bouncing around the West Coast when my best friend from undergrad told me to call her boyfriend's older sister. And within 15 minutes, this lady had bought me a flight to Alaska and given me a job as a guide up there.
Oh gosh.
Um, right. Mind you, we talked for like 2 hours. She hired me within 15 minutes, but then we kept talking, right? Never once did she ask me about my driving experience or anything. It was all just guiding. Like, tell me about your guiding experience. And I've been a
Jeez.
guide since I was 17 years old. And so I was like, yeah, this is great. Like, I'm 25 now. I've got quite a lot of guiding experience. I get up there and I'm living in a house in a small town. It's 4 blocks by 22. It's winter. And when I get to Alaska, that is. And
hmm
I'm in a house with 19 other people.
Oh gosh.
Only 2 of us are women. And she comes in one day and she goes, "You're going to learn how to drive a bus." And I straight up laughed in her face and said, "No, I'm not." And that's how I like got up to Alaska. And that's how I became a tour guide.
Jeez. Seems like a quite the whirlwind adventure there.
Yeah, exactly. And like when she gave me the job too, I had like 3 days to get from, I was near Mount Shasta, and I had to like
Mhm.
blast north to get to Seattle to like pack up all my stuff and get
Oh
to
gosh.
Alaska.
Jeez. So how long did you end up staying in Alaska?
I did 2015 till the pandemic. I did every summer, and even the last 2 summers actually I did it. So 2015 all the way to 2021, I was living there for the summer. Um, so 7 years.
Wow.
And
So
I spent a
what
couple winters, but not many.
hmm where all did you go in Alaska? Or where did you guide at?
So I was mostly a guide in Skagway, Alaska, which is in southeast.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I was in Skagway, but that was like our home base, and so we drove into Canada every single day up to like Carcross or Whitehorse. And then one summer I did the long distance tour, so I was a tour director, and so with that one, you're based out of Anchorage, and you go Anchorage, Fairbanks, or Anchorage, Denali, Fairbanks, private jet to Dawson City, Yukon, Canada, Whitehorse, and then back into Alaska at Skagway. And you just do that rainbow loop over and
Wow.
over and over again, back and forth for a summer.
Jeez.
Mhm.
That seems like a
Yeah,
lot.
it was a lot. It totally was a blast, but it was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Did how many tours a summer would you do?
Ooh, with the long distance one, shoot, we kind of turned and burned. Like it goes from that season was a little bit shorter, and I ended up having to cut that season short by like 3 weeks because I ended up getting a traveling performer gig for the winter, and so I had to leave for that.
A traveling performer? What's that?
Yeah. It sounds way cooler than it is. Like, so what I did is I traveled around the US giving presentations to groups of like anywhere from 50 to 300, all about how to travel up to Alaska and what that looks like.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah. So public speaking has always been a thing for me. Um, I don't know if I could tell you a specific number though, for just because it's been so long. I know that
Hmm.
I've seen over, I think as far as guests go, I'm close to like 200,000
Oh my gosh.
guests that I've led. Just
That's
because like
insane.
if you have a group of 55 and it's a new group every day
Yeah.
for however many years, it's a lot.
Jeez. Oh man. Imagine like think about all the lives that you impacted through that. That's insane.
Oh my gosh, there's a couple still on my Instagram that'll like pop in every now and then and like say something sweet. And I'm like, oh, you guys are the best. Um, yeah, it's heartwarming for sure.
Oh man. Well, yeah, I mentioned to you before when we were setting this up that I'm planning to head to Alaska in December to Fairbanks. What recommendations would you have for someone that's going to Alaska in the winter?
Oh yeah, bring layers. So many layers. Um, Transportation is a lot harder in the winter time. There's just not quite as much. Like for the most part, when people go up there in the winter, they're gonna like get a cabin and or like go to a cabin resort type of a style place.
Hmm.
Um, and there's not a lot for like hostels and whatnot. Like just not that kind of place. And a lot of people, when they go, they find a resort cabin type of situation and they just kind of camp out there where they have a restaurant there. They have all of the natural amenities, etc. Like that's pretty common. Um, but if you're gonna like, if you're interested in skiing or cross country skiing, there's tons of options for like backcountry work or like
Okay.
staying or like heli skiing is a huge deal near Alyeska, and that's super fun. Like Girdwood, that's the big ski resort areas, Alyeska, and that's south of Anchorage. Um, for
Okay.
Fairbanks specifically, transportation's tough in the winter. There's just not as much available.
Hmm.
Everything kind of shuts down.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
But
I
there's
was
still
just,
cool stuff like the hot springs, you know?
okay. Yeah,
Yeah, that.
I was just in Iceland and kind of the same thing. Like it's got to be. I can only imagine it being just a miserable place to be in the wintertime.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially like by the time. So December is pretty nice because everybody's still like, oh, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all of these wonderful things. And everybody's still like very much enjoying the winter time and each other and still being very social. But
Hmm.
once January hits, the weather gets worse. It gets darker. Everybody's tired. Everybody's like, all of the like festivities and fun things to look forward to are a lot less at that
Yeah.
point. And so like January, February is just miserable. Like most people leave at that stage because it's just not fun.
Hmm. And the sun like barely comes up.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you're going to Fairbanks, like you're not going to see much. Like you might see dusk for a couple hours and that'll be it. Because
Wow.
even in Skagway, like we only had maybe 3 or 4 hours of dusk during like the peak of winter. And that's what, 1,000 miles south of
Oh wow,
Fairbanks.
it's a long ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nobody really understands like just how big Alaska is. It's like a fifth of the size of the continental United States. So they get up there and they're like, "Oh, I can just like beep bop around," and it's like, "No, you can't."
It's like a whole other country over here.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
That's funny.
mhm.
So after Alaska, what did you do?
So in the wintertime, I would just pick a region and just go travel, like slowly through a region and just very hedonistically enjoy it. Um, for that was what I did like pre-COVID. And so I did a lot of like friend trips, solo trips, couple trips, everything. A lot around Southeast Asia, Europe, Central America. And then COVID hit and everything, shut down. Our entire city ended up shutting down. Like a lot of people had to leave. Most of us lost our jobs. Tourism, of course, tanked. So that was really
Hmm.
difficult. And it still hasn't fully recovered. Um, And so with COVID, I ended up like taking classes, moving back to Washington, and remodeling my van. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw the van is something that you've been working on lately. How's that going?
It's going really well. I'm actually finished with the build and everything.
Oh, nice.
I just haven't posted about it because I'm a slacker. Um, but it's amazing. It's so fun. And like this summer was kind of a rough one as far as the van goes. I just had a lot of mechanical issues. And so it's been a huge learning curve. Um, thank goodness I have like an incredible mechanic that is also teaching me as he's like helping me fix everything. He's teaching me a ton. And so I haven't had any problems for like the last 6 weeks, and it has been amazing. But definitely an adjustment. Like anything, it's quite an adjustment. Everything takes longer. There's a lot more planning. Um, it's a lot more time. Like I'm a very extroverted person. Um,
Hmm.
and so it's a lot of like alone time, which is great. But there are also times when I'm like, man, I miss people. I better schedule
Yeah.
that in.
That's funny. Do you like traveling around in the van, do you usually have like a place in mind you want to go to, or you just kind of go wherever you feel like?
I kind of have at least this summer, I've kind of had places in mind. Um, just because it's Washington is so busy these days, like you kind of have to plan a little bit more than I would prefer. Like I would rather
Hmm.
just kind of fly by the seat of my pants. But with Washington, like there's not as much boondocking spots that are like they just get filled up really quickly, especially on the weekends. And over the last year or so, I've been working at corporate jobs, so I'm kind of pigeonholed into a little bit of a weekend warrior situation or like being in places that I can for sure have service during the week. So
Hmm.
I've had to plan quite a bit more this summer. Um, but I think when I get back from India in January, I'll be able to like just fly by the seat of my pants, hopefully a bit more in the van.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be nice. I know it's been tough for me as well, like trying to still work my normal job, I would say,
Yeah.
while traveling around and being in different time zones and making everything work right. Um, it can be a struggle for sure. Wi-Fi
Yeah.
is always a necessity.
Yeah, and you can't always like predict like how's this Wi-Fi going to be, and like you can ask
Yeah, you
questions
never
about it,
know.
and like there's resources, but it's also like, man, you have to like do so much research just to like
Hmm.
get the basics done, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it can be quite a lot of work, that's for sure.
Hmm. But so worth
Um,
it.
yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah, so worth it. I don't regret any of my travels.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, on that note, we were talking about like making travel like your life and making it a full-time thing. Um, and I know you've been working to do that and have done that over the years. So kind of tell the listeners about that.
So I feel like I've gone through phases of like different types of travel. Um, like when I was still in school, it was a lot of like, oh, it's spring break. Where can I go for super cheap? And just finding tickets on like Scott's cheap flights and stuff like that and using those resources to just go somewhere.
Hmm.
Um, or like hitchhiking around Hawaii. I was like, well, I just want to go. And so, does anybody want to go with? And like a friend wants to go. So let's go, you know? Um,
Yeah.
and in that way, it's like budgeting a lot because like I'm a college student trying to like go explore, but also like on a budget. So that time was a lot of like camping, not necessarily squatting in the way of like abandoned buildings, but definitely a lot of like tent camping. Where can I sleep for free or cheap right here? Like, oh, this park looks pretty out of the way. I'll sleep under this tree, you know, like that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Which if I wasn't a wilderness guide for so long, I probably wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And then once I got into Alaska and worked super hard, saved up as much as I could for the summer, then I would just like hostel travel, super budget still, because I wanted to stretch it as long as possible and not come back to Alaska like the following season totally broke. Um, and then since COVID, I think my travels have changed a lot too with I think I'm more introspective about it and more purposeful because I don't have the like safety net of Alaska and a seasonal job right now, at least.
Hmm.
Um, you just have to plan a little bit more. And I think with if anybody wants to start this lifestyle, it's a lot of introspection. It's a lot of like being brutally honest with yourself about like what kind of spaces are you comfortable sleeping in? Do you need a hotel? Do you want an Airbnb? Where's your spectrum of comfort and like
Hmm.
how are you going to do it in a safe manner too? Also transportation. What's your budget? Like there's just a lot of like brutally honest moments that you're going to have with yourself to be like, okay, can I sleep under a random tree right now? Do I want to do that? No, I want to be in a hotel where I feel safe and comfortable and can just be. Like so it's a lot of those introspective moments. Um,
Yeah. I've definitely had a lot of those questions for myself as I've traveled. I'm like, yeah, sometimes I could sleep under this random tree, but I'm not gonna want to do that every day. Or,
right.
take a van through a big city kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And every location that you pick, it's going to be different. And as you travel, like, there's also like travel fatigue too. Like,
Hmm.
for me, the first couple weeks, I'm like, yeah, I'm here. Ah, and I want to do all of the things. And it's super fun. And like, I have all the energy. And then after a while, I'm like, okay, I need to like for real rest and like incorporate that in. And so over the last couple of years, I'm noticing that like, yes, I love a hostel, but like every other week or so, I just need like a night or two in a private room just to like
Hmm.
decompress and reset myself. Um, and
Yeah,
it
for
depends on the
sure.
location. It's like how feasible is that with your budget? You know, that also makes a huge difference, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
always the struggle is, what can you actually afford to?
Yeah. And finding the resources to like find the cheaper things or use points or this or that. Like
Hmm.
all such a spectrum, and it's ever evolving based on like where you're at and where your priorities are at.
Yeah.
Like if yeah, so it's always different. And then like coordinating with whoever you're traveling with too, that makes a huge difference because then you're like you have to be very self-aware but then also very communicative to make sure that you can everybody's needs are getting met and that like I don't know, just coordinating is a little bit more
Yeah.
difficult. So like open and honest communication as well as like the self-awareness to know what it is that you want in any given moment. Like it's just a lot of I think everything comes down to introspection with
Hmm.
this kind of lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. What have been like some of your favorite moments traveling and maybe some of your least favorite?
Ooh. Um, let's start with least favorite because it's in my brain. This got brought up recently, like women's safety.
Mm.
And it's interesting because everybody complains about how, like at least in the US, they're like, "Oh, the world is so dangerous. Don't leave the US." La 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 la. But like, I've had more sexual assault issues in the US than anywhere else. Like, men following me, people saw like being very aggressive and like grabbing me and stuff like that. And I think that that's one of the
Hmm.
hardest parts of traveling, especially like as a solo woman. Like you just have like you can't just exist in the world. Like you have to constantly be aware of your surroundings. And in the van too, like I have to do so many like extra special things to make people think that I'm not alone in the van. Like I have like
Hmm.
dirty shoes, like men's shoes that I got from Goodwill that I like put outside of my van whenever I go I need like a stop anywhere. So people
That's
think
smart.
like a man is inside. Yeah, exactly. It's like there's just a lot of like little things like that. Like I carry around like a fake wedding ring that I'll like put on
Mm.
if I like feel unsafe. Um and it's like such a bummer that that exists, but it's definitely a thing. It's an issue for sure. So I think that's like the biggest bummer. But that's also just living as a woman.
Yeah,
Like as
unfortunately, that's
sad as
just
that
the
is.
world.
Yeah. But as far as travel goes, like health, like fun, exciting, like the good stuff, um, traveling kind of revives my faith in humanity in a lot of ways because you meet some of the most kind and loving human beings.
Hmm.
Um, and like the most serendipitous things too. Like I met one of my best friends at a hostel in Belize a couple years ago, like right before the pandemic started, and like we were awkwardly trying to cook in this small little kitchen. So it's like such a like you've been in a hostel, you understand
Oh
like the
yeah,
awkward dance of like, let me make space for you, but also I need that space. Let me get into that drawer,
yeah.
you know.
I'm here right now.
Yeah, you get it. And so like that's how we like met. My and now she's like my best friend. I talk to her every day. She lives in Canada. I live in the US and like it's so fun. But like those little moments, like I know super awkward at first, but then I invited her to go hiking the next day and now we're besties. And so that's those moments are I think the best or like learning like I was in Malaysia a couple years ago and I love going on like the walking tours. I mean, I'm a
Hmm.
tour guide, so like I love history. Um, and just being able to be a tourist on a guided trip and see like I understand it from a tour guide perspective and so I could be like a better tourist for those guides. And there's one
Hmm.
lady who she was just one of the best tour guides I've ever had ever and I was so engaged in everything and afterwards she was like this was a really rough tour for me and you made the tour like super bearable. Like the whole tour, I just did it for you because you're the only one that was like fun and engaged and whatnot. And like those moments, like making somebody's day. Um, yeah, I just love that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's gonna be one of my favorite parts too, is just the people you meet, the unexpected relationships and conversations that you have. It's just I don't know. It's amazing to see that even though we all have our differences around the world, we're really in a lot of ways similar.
Yeah. And one beautiful thing about when traveling and meeting people is that it's a snapshot of your life at that given point. And
Hmm.
so it's not, there's no history with a lot of the people that you're meeting. And so it's a very different, like fast intense relationship because you're already in a vulnerable state from traveling and being in a place that's unknown. And then you meet people that are also in that same vulnerable place. And then you just bond so quickly and so deeply over that, like vulnerability and getting to be like your most authentic self without history or other tangled tethers bringing you
Yeah.
to like, you know, an idea of self. And I think that's like
Hmm.
a beautiful thing.
Yeah. It definitely forces you to be in the moment too.
Yeah.
You have to. I don't know. I really enjoy it too because you're just there. You're in the moment. You're doing your thing, not thinking about all the bills you got to pay and stuff like that. It's just I'm here exploring and meeting these people, and it is what it is.
Yeah, it's such a zen, like meditative thing, I think, in a lot of ways too, because it forces you to be like very in tune with your senses and in tune with yourself. Like, like you're the only one responsible for yourself out there. So like if you're getting hangry and like being a poopy pants, like that's on you. Figure it
Yeah.
out.
It's also nice to be like, you know what? I'm gonna go to this place today, or I'm gonna eat this or do that or whatever, and not have to worry about anything else.
Yeah, you can just do what you want, and that's so freeing because we don't get that in like I don't want to say our normal lives, but I mean, kinda. You
Yeah,
know, like
yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know. Traveling's amazing, but um, so I noticed on your website that you do a lot of travel photography as well. Tell me a little bit about that.
yeah, so that started in Alaska. I mean, how could you not? It's beautiful, you know?
Yeah.
And then over the years, it's just like evolved into wanting to help and work with tourism boards, helping to share the story of their locations. And so coming back to, it was always kind of a hobby up till COVID hit really. And I moved to Tacoma, and had to like fall in love with my hometown, which I don't know if you know much about Tacoma, but like when I left when I was 18, I was jazzed to leave. Like I could not
Yeah,
get out fast enough.
I
Um,
understand that.
right, exactly. And so like coming back at 32, I was like, or 30, yeah, 30. I was like, oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've been here. I better like reacquaint myself. And the best way I felt to do that was with photography. And then that spiraled into like working with the Tacoma Tourism Board and then branching out to other cities around Washington and trying to share. I'm a tour guide, of course. So finding like the story within the city and then trying to share that story through photos. And that's been just a blast. It's like changed the way I travel in a lot of ways too, which is wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, that's really cool. You're gonna have to give me some photography tips because that is I would say the skill that I'm lacking in. I don't really like have a desire to like really learn all the ins and outs of. I'm more of a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Fair, fair.
but yeah, I'd definitely love to learn more about photography and how to get that perfect moment so you can capture it forever.
Yeah. Oh, we'll trade. You
Yeah,
you
there
can
we
teach
go.
me about podcasting and stuff.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, Candice, anything else that you want to share with the listeners right now?
Ooh, shoot. I think just with travel, I think my go-to phrase and like quote that I always fall back on if I'm like unsure of what to do or if I'm kind of getting in my head about is this a good option? How can I travel? How can I do this? Um, is it better to like stay at home and save or should I go do this or whatever, you know?
Hmm.
Life's short. Like respond. The
Yes.
quote. It's kind of a silly quote. It's from Rumi, but it's just respond to every call that excites your spirit.
Mm,
Um,
I like
and
that.
it right. It's so perfect because it'll give you all the answers you need. What's exciting you in this moment, and go for it.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. That's a good way to put it, I think.
Yeah.
And like you said, life is short. You never know. So
Yeah.
if something calls to you, you got to go take it.
Right. I will say the one caveat is like non-harming. Like
Yeah,
if it excites you and it's non-harming, go for it.
yeah, That's true too. Um, well, anyways, we'll have to do a part two to this because I know you got some big stuff coming up the next few months. So I definitely want to talk with you more about these travels, especially after these big things. But we'll leave that for another time in the next few months. So we'll definitely have to chat after you've done those things.
Yeah, totally. Let's keep in touch. I'm curious about all of your travels and what you're doing right now too. So I'm very excited for you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks again for the time. And where can people find you?
Instagram is my main platform, but I'm on all social medias at chasing period Candice. Um, but Instagram's
Okay.
definitely my main one, or my
Yeah.
website at chasingcandice.com.
Yeah, perfect. Well, everyone will have to check it out. I know I've really enjoyed following you on Instagram as well. So yeah, looking forward to more travels, and we'll have to talk again soon.
That sounds great.
Uh,
Thank you so much for
awesome. Well,
having me.
yeah, of course, anytime. Well, enjoy Washington State, and I will enjoy my hostel here in Madrid. And I'll talk to you later.
Sounds great. See ya.
All right, bye. Hey everybody, Kyle here. If you enjoyed today's show and want more, you can always check out every episode on Spotify and Anchor. And now you can also listen on YouTube. Links are in the description below. If you want to see my travel pictures as well as travel pictures from guests on the show, you can check them out on Instagram. The page is called Our Travel Experiences Podcast. And if you want to share your own pictures on the Instagram page and or be a guest on the podcast, you can message me via that Instagram page or email me at ourtravelexperiences@outlook.com. I would love to see your pictures and hear about your travel experiences. And if that isn't enough for you, make sure to check out my new show, From Around the World Fridays. Every Friday, I'm taking 5 to 10 minutes to discuss one specific travel topic, whether that be questions I get from listeners, sharing some souvenirs that I've bought over the years, or discussing one particular city or country that I've been to, and so much more. You'll be able to listen to that via Spotify and Anchor as well, and be able to see the video version, which I'm really excited about, on YouTube. So check it out. I promise you won't be disappointed. And thanks again for listening, and I will see you around the world soon.